Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of Reading Layamon Brut. It's been a little while since the last episode, as tends to happen during semesters, so I do apologise for that. I have been busy teaching and marking, and I gave a few lectures this semester, this time on King Horn rather than on Layamon, but nevertheless it was good fun, and it got me thinking about another text, actually, called Hornkilde and Maiden Rimnild, which shows up in a unique copy, so we only have one copy of it. And I've actually been thinking, or sort of toying around with the idea of doing some videos on that text once we get to the end of the Lear story in Layamon. It wouldn't take us quite so long. The text is only about 1,100 lines. I might leave that one to the side for now, and we'll get back into Layamon. Thank you to people for writing in. I will address a listener question at the end, so do stick around to the end of the video. Okay, so we're picking up today at line 1558. Now, when we left off last time, Lear had asked his three daughters, of course, which of them, how much they each loved him. Whoever gave the best speech would get the better part of his land. The two eldest daughters played along. The youngest daughter, Cordelia, did not. She told her father he was being a bit silly, really, a bit naive, in thinking that this plan would elicit genuine responses or sincere responses, and she said she loved her father because he was her father, and she loved him as her father. He was not impressed with her honesty, and so today we will be seeing some of the aftermath of her response and how her father treats her. So, without further ado, let's get started. In France was a king, richer and sweeter kena. Aganippus was he haten, Hallethen he was aldere. He was a younger king, ach quen navad he nane. He sende his asunder into this lande, to Lear than king, and leerfliche hine great. He bad hine don is will, jeven him Cordelia, and he here woulde haben, heche to Arrequene, and after here don arrest, that here were alre levest. In France there was a king, powerful and very bold. He was called Aganippus. He was the leader of warriors. He was a young king, but he had no queen. A queen had he none. He sent his messenger into this land to Lear the king, and greeted him dearly or amicably. He, Aganippus, bade him, Lear, do his, Aganippus's, will, to give him, Aganippus, Cordelia. Pretty straightforward, just the pronouns make it a little bit hard to follow, maybe, if we just translated them as pronouns instead of introducing the characters' names. And he, Aganippus, wished to have her, Cordelia, as a high queen. And we still read this auxiliary here as governing this infinitive, and he wished to do literally soonest or first, but I suppose we could say something like immediately here, or as quickly as he could. He would do according to her that which was, or we have a subjunctive here, so that which would be dearest of all to her. So he will treat her very well. He will do what she wants. Fair have den liedende men I speken of dan meidene, feirnesse and freershippe at foren dan Frenche kinge, of hire mutsle feirolita, of hire mutsle monshippe, who here was tholemode, of feire hire theowen, that nes on Lear kinges lond, nan wiefmen alswa hende, and the king Aganippus I grete Lear kin thus, Laerkin hine bethochte, wat her don mochte. He letten a riet, and well hit letter dichten. He sende hit be his sonde, in Fransene lande. Far or far and wide, travelling men had spoken, they had spoken or related the fairness or the beauty and the nobility of the maiden before the French king. They spoke of her great fair countenance, so of her beautiful appearance, and of her great honour, how she was patient or long-suffering, and they spoke of her beautiful virtues, of her fair customs, her fair virtues. So that there was not in the land of King Lear any woman all as gracious, just as gracious. And the king, Aganippus, greeted King Lear thus. King Lear thought to himself what he might do. He caused a letter to be written, and he caused it to be arranged well, and sent it by his messenger into the land of the French. Thus spake this kinges riet, he twas Sweden he quoth. The king of Brutaine, the Lear is he haten, greateth Aganippus, then aldere of France, worshippe have thou, thire well dede, and thire fire sonde, that great thou may woldest. Ac each do they well to wetene, her be mine riet richt, that mi drichtliche land a twa ich habe ideeled, I heven it mine twam dochteren, the may bearth swithadere. The letter or the message of the king spoke thus. It was known widely known, so it's being read to the court. The king of Britain, who is called Lear, greets Aganippus, the ruler of France. May you have honour for your well deeds, your good deeds, and also your good messenger, who you wished to greet me. But I make you to understand well, or I give you to know well, here by my good, my correct, my true letter, my message, that I have divided my lordly land in two, and then we still, as before, read this auxiliary here as governing this past participle here. I have given it to my two daughters, who are very dear to me. Dochter, ich habe Friede, ach ne ratje ich waar her liebe, for her mij for huste, en her hold mij for hene, en for mire halde her mij onalede, her makede mij zwaar swithe wrath, de woordse hier shall I worten, of alle mine lande, ne of alle mine lede, die each avre begeet, other begeet maaie. Each day such a sothricht, na shall her haben nawicht, ach jef thou her wilt haben, vermeide her is hende, each her wolle they bewieten, en senden ha they in anne schippe, mit selven hier klaven, of mij navet her namore. I have the third daughter, but I do not care where she might live, because she insulted me or scorned me, and she holds me or considers me for lowly, so she holds me as contemptible, and she dishonored me. This is probably a scribal error here for unathalid, so treated me as ignoble because of my age. This is just the word elder. Note that an H has been added, as still tends to happen in a number of dialects of spoken English today. When you have a word starting with a vowel, sometimes people will stick a h sound on the beginning. She made me so very angry. It shall become the worse for her. And these next three lines we kind of need to rearrange a little bit in modern English. So we'll start at line 1589, the second half line, which is, she shall not have nothing, literally, so she'll have nothing of all my land and of my people, nor of my people, which I ever obtained or may obtain. So any land, everything that I've got and anything I might acquire in the future, which, to be fair, is probably not much, considering Lear is looking at getting rid of what he has at present. I say to you truthfully, but if you wish to have her, because she is a gracious maiden, a goodly lady, I will give or entrust her to you and send her to you in a ship with her clothes themselves, so with just the clothes she's wearing. She has no more, or shall not have any more, from me. If thou her wilt underfon, all this ilke ich wulle don, aside ich habe then a grund, and thou self worth alle sund. This reach come to France, to than Freya kinge, he hit letter raden, leaf him wearing the runen. Thou winde the kinge that hit were for uvele that Lear kinge here father, here him wulde at leden, and he muchel the woodlooker wilnede des meidenes, and side to his bornen that was the busier king. Each Layamon enoch, that na mare each ne reche, ne shall never Lear king that meiden me at lede, ach each here wulle haben, to here are quene. So Lear's message continues, if you wish to receive her, I will do all this same thing, or all this very thing that I have just described. I have said the ground, or the reason, the terms of the agreement, and may yourself become all sound, so all well and safe. It's kind of like a closing greeting, wishing King Aganippus well. The writ came to France, to the noble king. He caused it to be read, so in the court. The secrets, or the words, the contents were dear to him. Then the king thought that it were because of evil, or that it were evil, he considered it evil, that King Lear, her father, would deprive him of her, or hold back her from him. And he, this one, what shall we do with this? Okay, so he desired the maiden much the madlier, much the more eagerly, I suppose we could say. And now this is a possessive, this is a genitive, because historically this verb, wilnian in Old English in particular, takes a genitive. So I suppose if we wanted to capture that sense, it's a grammatical sense, so we don't really need to capture it in modern English, but if we wanted to, we could say, was desirous of the maiden. And he said to his warriors, we have the opposite here to what we saw before, where the H got stuck on the front. Well, here it's been dropped off the front of a word. And he said to his warriors, he who was the active king, I am a rich man enough, or I'm plentifully rich enough, that no more, that I do not care for any more. So I don't want any more stuff. That's not what I'm interested in. Nor shall King Lear ever withhold or deprive me of that maiden. But I wish to have her as a high queen. Hebben here father al his land, all his silver and his gold. Ne bidde ich nana mathmes, myself ich haben in oge. But that maiden Cordelia, then have ich mina wille. Mid riet and mid worte, he sende efter to this lande, and bad Lear king him sende his dochter there was hende. And he wilde well done, mid muchle worshippe here under form. So her father may have, or let her father have, all his land, all his silver and his gold. This is of course Aganippus still speaking. I do not ask for any treasure. I myself have plenty. I have enough. But for the maiden Cordelia, so that's all I ask for is Cordelia, then I would have my wish. Then I would have all I want. I'm only interested in her, don't care about any earthly possessions or dowry. He sent back to this land with a letter and with a word, and he asked Lear, the king, to send his daughter to him, his daughter who was gracious. And he, Aganippus, wished to do well, with much honour. We understand this auxiliary again, so he wished to receive her. Da nom the olde king adele his maiden, mit selven hier klades en lette hier forthe lieden. Over the stremes hier father hier was storne. Aganippus, the French king, underfeng this maiden child. Al his folk it was iqueme, and marketen hier to quene. And thus here there belevde, lev here was dan lerden. And Lear king hier father lovede I this lande. And hadde jeven is twine dochteren, al his drichtliche land. Then the old king took his noble maiden, so his noble daughter, with her clothes themselves, so with just her clothes, and caused her to go forth over the streams, so over the water, in this case the channel. Her father was severe to her, or with her. Aganippus, the French king, received this maiden, apologies for chopping off this bit of the line here, received this maiden child, meaning a young woman, a person of noble birth in particular. She is not a child at this point, she is an adult. It was pleasing to all his people, and he made her as a queen. And thus she lived there, or remained there. She was dear to the people. And King Lear, her father, lived in this land, so in Britain, and had given his two daughters all his lordly land. So that's, of course, the two eldest daughters. Okay, and that is where we shall leave things off today. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments, questions, corrections, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can do that either by way of the comment section below, or by way of the Facebook page for the video series, which you can find linked in the video description. Now, I will always try to respond, and I do apologize if I get taken, if I get caught up with things and it takes me a lot longer, an undue length of time to respond. I do apologize if that happens. All right, so I'll turn now to a comment that has been written in. So this was on the previous video. Thank you, Norman, for writing in. I apologize it's taken me so inordinately long to respond to your comment and to the question. So first of all, thank you for watching the videos. Now, Norman has asked about the pronunciation of terminal E or final E, and what determines whether or not this should be pronounced as a separate syllable. So there are a few factors that come into play here. The first and perhaps most obvious of these is dialect, and this varies, of course, depending on both the time period and the region. So Chaucer and Layamon, writing in 2 different centuries and in 2 different parts of Britain, will have their dialect is going to differ, and differs quite dramatically. Now, not only that, but Chaucer's English was also changing over the course of his own lifetime. And so Chaucer himself seems to have generally pronounced the final unstressed E, but it was dying out. So we need to consider both what the final E is doing, so why it is there in the first place, and also where it occurs when determining whether or not it should be pronounced. So if the final E is stressed, it pretty much goes without saying that we should pronounce it. In words like pite and cite, for instance, the modern pronunciation is helpful here. So you might compare with, modern pity and city. So the E in question, the one that poses this problem, that causes this trouble, is really only the unstressed final E. And it can show up for a variety of reasons. First of all, it can historically be part of the word, or it can be part of an inflection, whether that's part of the verbal conjugations or the noun cases or the adjective cases, or it can be added by analogy. So people might see other words that end with an unstressed E and then add an unstressed E on the ending of other words. It's kind of like a hypercorrection. Now, inflections are still quite important in Laymon's English. So while they are not always consistent, Layamon often relies on inflections rather than word order to convey his meaning, and we've already seen quite a number of instances of this in the course of the video series. Laymon's nouns in particular often still have distinct dative cases, which Chaucer's generally don't. Now, Laymon's listeners would then need to hear the inflections in order to understand what's going on, because the inflections rather than the word order what cue us into what's happening in any given sentence. This means that the final E would usually need to be pronounced. And again, while this isn't always the case, word order is still very important in Layamon, and probably even does take precedence over the cases. The cases are still... There are instances where Layamon does rely on cases over word order. So in reading Laymon's English, I'm pronouncing the final E, generally, in order to capture the inflections. Inflections were much less important in Chaucer's English, and they were declining further. His verbs still conjugate, as English verbs would continue to conjugate for centuries, and his adjectives technically still inflect, but only very minimally. This means that Chaucer has more flexibility in whether or not to use an articulated final E. Whether or not it is used will ultimately depend on the metre that Chaucer uses. So different people reading Chaucer aloud today might prioritise different things. So some people might prioritise the grammatical structure of the language, while others might prioritise Chaucer's metre. If you want a fairly general rule for pronouncing final E, think of it this way. So stressed final E is always pronounced. Unstressed final E is also pronounced unless the following word begins with a vowel or an H. That's a fairly general rule and doesn't quite factor in all of the nuances just mentioned about, whether or not the E is etymologically part of the word, and whether or not it's part of an inflection or what's going on in each individual instance. But it's a good general rule. So I do hope that helps to clarify and to answer the question. So my apologies for taking so long to get to it. And thank you again for writing in.